And it was my team who eventually basically said, it's pretty simple at the end of the day. The choice, it's a binary choice. Do you want your power with carbon or without? And if you want it without carbon, then hydropower is going to be the best way to bring that to you right now. So that's where we netted out. It was a good conversation, and that's why we really got excited and really wanted to help.
Welcome back to DAM, the official podcast of Northwest Hydropower. I'm your host, Austin Rohr, and I manage all things communications here at Northwest RiverPartners. To live up to our organization's mission and educate and advocate about hydropower in our region, we developed the Our Power is Water campaign. For the past 4 years, Our Power is Water has spread far and wide across the digital space and in the real world, telling the story of the importance of hydropower to the Northwest and our way of life. And that's exactly what we've done. It's been great to see this ad campaign evolve, grow, and reach people in new ways. A successful campaign doesn't just happen, though. You need to have every piece of the puzzle lined up perfectly to do things right, and you need to have the right people in your corner. In our case, that's been the folks at North, a local shop that has been instrumental to crafting the campaign both creatively and strategically. And we've done some incredible things working together. So today I have the honor of introducing you all to Rebecca Armstrong, CEO of North, to share the agency's story and speak to the importance of raising public awareness for important causes. Thank you for joining us today on DAM.
Hey, Austin, it's a pleasure to be here. We're so grateful for the work that we've done together, and super fun to be participating on DAM today. So excited to be here.
So before we get really into the actual topics of today, I think it's only right that, given that you're on, I need to give credit where credit is due, because I hear so much positive feedback about the name specifically of this podcast. And I believe it was actually on a call with you all that we sort of figured out what the name was going to be. And I don't know who exactly suggested it, although it may have been you, but somebody threw out the word DAM and it stuck, and here we are now.
From memory, I think I was in, this office with my whiteboard behind it. We were chatting away, and I turned around and I just wrote on the board, "Damn!" Exclamation mark. And I didn't think it would go anywhere. And the next thing I know, it was the title of your podcast. So it was inspired by the work you do, obviously, but I think I threw out the name.
Yeah, it was a perfect fit. And people, like I said, we get so much positive feedback about it. And whenever it comes up, I always try and tell people, I wish I could take credit, but I can't. It was not our own creative genius, but we were lucky enough to have it just thrown out there, and it's been great ever since. So even just the other week, I was doing a presentation to some folks over in the Tri-Cities and mentioned the podcast as part of that presentation. I always try and promote it anywhere I go. And, the whole room lights up with laughter. I mean, people just get a kick out of it. So it's been great.
Well, it's fun, it's relevant, and it sets the tone. So I'm glad it's been useful for you guys.
Absolutely. So, as we always do, we try and kick things off on this podcast talking about the guest and getting to know you a little bit better. And so I think the place that I wanted to start out was just trying to maybe get a better understanding of the journey that you've had in becoming the CEO at North.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So it probably hasn't escaped your listeners' notice by now that I'm not from these parts. I actually started my career in London, in England, in the late 80s. In advertising, I've always worked in advertising. And back in those days, some of the early accounts I worked on as a strategist and an account administrator included national power. I kicked my career off in the nuclear power business in Europe. So I got some of that experience under my belt. And then in the early 90s, my boyfriend at the time asked if I'd be interested in moving to the United States with him on an adventure. And so being young and naive and just thinking, gosh, it's all going to be the same. They speak English. It rains a lot there. I moved with him to Portland, Oregon, and was very lucky enough to be able to find work here. And coincidentally, the first account I worked on when I came to Portland was, in fact, Bonneville Power Administration. So I got a very early introduction to the social and economic underpinnings of our region. My partnership with those folks was really interesting. And in the course of my 12 years at Colin Webber, my first employer, I also got to work on Portland General Electric for a number of years. I got to work with the folks at Puget Sound Energy. So it just almost not, I mean, I'm totally interested and passionate about it, but almost by accident, really, rather than by design, I ended up with a resume that was quite power heavy, if you will, along with a whole lot of other things. So really, after 33 plus years in the biz, that brought me to founding my own agency with my now business partner and our chief creative officer, Mark Ray. And that was in 2006 when we met, and we had a shared interest in being close to the work. We both come from large global agency networks, and we were anxious to actually get back to a situation where we were closely involved with our clients' business and helping them make decisions and formulating really brilliant marketing plans for them. So that was the genesis of North in 2006. So yeah, North's been around now 18 years, and we're still having fun. Still getting to work with clients that we can pick and choose from, people that we like, people who we think admire their business goals, their reason for being in the world. And that's really that's at the heart of North. Another thing worth mentioning, in the course of business, it became important to us to be certified as a B Corp, as a benefit corporation. We feel that almost puts like the good housekeeping seal of approval on our commitment to doing good by our community and by the world.
And that is one of the really interesting things about North that has always stood out to us, coming from the client perspective, is that in a lot of ways, you're very local to the area, very local in what you're involved in. And then at the same time, you look at the portfolio of some of the work that you've done over the years, and it's with places that are, large and have a much broader reach than just our backyard here in the Northwest. What have been some of the more fun projects and campaigns that you've gotten to be a part of during your time with the agency?
Yeah, I mean, I've described all the energy work an experience I have, but we've really worked in an awful lot of different categories doing really interesting things. So like you said, they could range from some of our funnest work. I was with Columbia Sportswear, especially when the indomitable Gert Boyle was still alive and with us, and we were able to work on the Tested Tough campaign, taking employees of Columbia Sportswear to rugged places around the globe, really testing their products. That was super fun. But we've also kept it really local. And so most recently, we've enjoyed a partnership with the Oregon Humane Society, helping them raise funds for the very important work that they do. And in that instance, we decided that the biggest fans of the work of the Oregon Humane Society are animals. But since they don't have any money, we featured animals asking people for money. So we've had super fun with that. We've done all sorts of work with and of course, we've really enjoyed our partnership with Northwest RiverPartners and the wonderful work we do with you guys. We've also gone to work with Electrify America, helping them promote their chargers for electric vehicles. We got to work with Solar World, highlighting the work that they've done with their corporate social responsibility work in Haiti, among other places. But we've gotten to sell cocktails in a can. We're selling socks right now for another client. We're all, I mean, what all these places and things have in common is that they're good people who put something of value for people in the world, and that's why we enjoy working with them.
And I'd love to know, particularly when it comes to the Humane Society, just from a personal note,
Yeah.
how that partnership came together and how you've been able to obviously not only promote the Humane Society itself, but help them with everything that they do to better, animal causes in our area.
Yeah, I mean that was through most of our business comes through references, right? If you treat people right and you have good relationships in the world, business comes to you, and we've been very lucky to be in that position. So Oregon Humane Society were introduced to us through friends, if you will, and they entrusted us with their business, which was great. They had one pretty hot business challenge, which is around their new campus in Salem. People didn't know who they were down there, and there was a little bit of resistance to them coming into the market. Like they were big animal welfare, if you will. So we, our job was to work with them to say like, but no, we're here to help your community animals. We are you. Salemites work in the Salem campus. It's by Salem for Salem, and we're really just here to help the community animals. So that's how we got introduced. We were able to show that we could make an impact in that market, and then they had us help with the fundraising in the Portland market as well. And we're about to actually tackle another campaign for Salem. So we're stoked for that. But we're also big animal lovers ourselves, as you might remember. I currently have 3 dogs. I've had as many as 5. So more, they're all rescues, all different sizes and colors and types. But I think the point I'm telling you that is it is as important for us, not just to like you, our clients as people, and to admire what you're doing, but also to be active users and heavily involved in the service too. So yeah, I mean, the fact that I have had as many as 5 rescues at one time meant that working with OHS was a no-brainer. So
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning as part of that conversation that actually some of the inspiration that sparked today's podcast in particular was a post that I had put together that involved a picture of my dog behind the microphone here, one of the podcast microphones. And
yeah.
I also, in doing some kind of pre-research for the podcast and putting together topics and questions for today, had come across a post that you had put up recently of one of your dogs, which I believe looked like you might have also been a wiener dog. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of them. I never thought I would be until I rescued one, and
Not
now I'm
funny.
kind of addicted.
My stories with miniature dachshunds is I would not have been a miniature dachshund person until this is an interesting story. One moved in with us from next door. He was next door's dog, and he kept coming over to our back door and barking to be let in. He kept running away literally from there and coming over. And it happened so many times that eventually they said to us, he just seems so much happier with you. And we were like, that's so weird, because he's 12 years old for a start. I mean, why would he suddenly abandon camp? But anyway, we took him in, and at the time I can remember thinking, well, he's 12 years old, this can't go on much longer. And he actually lived to be 19, which is amazing. And his name was Gunner, and he began my love of miniature dachshunds. And now we have the dog that I posted the other day. In a moment of, I was just trying to give everybody a break from the heaviness of political news, so I thought I would post a picture, of our new dog, Goody, also a miniature dachshund. And I had so much more interest and engagement from that post than I ever do from any of my dry business posts. It was hilarious. So I'm glad it entertained you, Austin.
It is very entertaining. I don't know how entertaining it can be to the rest of the hydropower listening audience that's out there, but
Yeah,
I just had to personally bring it up. I think it was
we
just
may
the
cut that
coolest
whole
thing.
section public, but you know what? I tell you, yeah, adopt a wiener, a miniature dachshund's unbeatable. Such enthusiasm and unbridled joy will come into your life.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, they're fantastic. So getting back to, I guess, kind of the actual topic of the conversation,
Oh yeah.
you mentioned, the talking about a lot of the causes that are important out there besides just adopting dogs. And um, among those, obviously, we came to you as a hydropower advocacy organization. I'd love to know candidly, what did the team and yourself think, just being approached by us and having this, I guess, a different perspective coming to you as opposed to even maybe just your standard, utility, for example?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I took the call, right, and I approached it with joy, actually, and enthusiasm, in part because of my history with the Bonneville Power Administration and my knowledge of hydropower. I've always thought it was a huge, majorly beneficial part of the economic infrastructure of this region. So I was stoked. Now, I did have challenging conversations with the rest of the folks back at the agency. And like we do with any client, actually, we really kind of weigh up the pros and cons. There are definitely some challenges, and there are some very loud voices out there, rightly promoting the important rights of groups whose lives really were forever altered, and in some cases threatened by the building of the dams throughout the last century. So that, and obviously the rights of the salmon and salmon fisheries and those kinds of things. So there was some pretty serious discussions about where do we net out on this? What's the right thing to do? And it was my team who eventually basically said, it's pretty simple at the end of the day. The choice, it's a binary choice. Do you want your power with carbon or without? And if you want it without carbon, then hydropower is going to be the best way to bring that to you right now. So that's where we netted out. It was a good conversation, and that's why we really got excited and really wanted to help. Now, I know there are other agencies out there that would have said absolutely not. No, we're not doing it. Based on those things I've just talked about and the rights of the native populations and what it's done to salmon population. But I personally don't think that's sort of really understanding the whole picture and the value that hydropower brings also to these communities that we're talking about. I know it's a tricky conversation, but around what climate change has done to the fish populations, even in and of itself, the great work that has been done to mitigate for the damage done to fish populations, all those things factor into the discussion. And I think it's complex, right? But we still, as an agency, believe that it's incredibly important.
And that's something too that, I likewise am very curious about is, having worked with us on this campaign for the past 4 years and having to navigate through some of those questions and challenges, and how do we communicate those things in the right way and confront some of the things that we expect may come back at us as a result of putting ourselves out there like this. Has it had an impact on the views of yourself and the other folks at the agency in terms of looking at the energy picture here in the Northwest, not just as it pertains to hydropower, but just as far as looking at sort of the broader challenges that we face as a whole?
Yeah, just the last 4 years have been amazing and sort of understanding the nuanced conversation, because I think we could also, based on what I just said, it's a binary choice. Do you want your power with carbon or without? We could have come at it in a very kind of west side of the area, like kind of urban, like climate change, and that is an important part of the argument, but it's way more sophisticated than that. It's a lot more about where your power is coming from and how close it is to you and how affordable it is and all these kinds of things. And that affects populations in different ways across the region. So an important learning for us has been like the hierarchy of messaging and where it changes depending on who you're talking to, what's most important to whom. And even down to not just whether it's rural versus urban, but we've also noticed a distinct difference between how men respond to messaging and how women respond to messaging. And that's what we've dialed up and down over the last 4 years to make sure that our message is getting to the right people in the way that it makes sense to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think something else too that ties right into is in terms of what has or hasn't worked from a messaging perspective, or maybe where the best messages and strategies have been and things like that. I mean, it's changed, it seems like, a lot in a span of 4 years. And I don't know if that's typical of other issues or other things that you've tried to tackle in your career, but it's been very interesting from my perspective, at least, to see how much there, there's some things that really stay the same and they stay true to what they are, and we really don't have to deviate much. But there's other areas where it feels like we've had to be really adaptive and try and keep up with where people are at. And it seems like that has been something that's shifted a lot from where we started 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think one of the learnings, and especially with the sort of political noise right now in the last couple of years, it's very divided the nation around all sorts of issues. And I think what we've learned is that it is not appropriate for us to leap in and come in even with even more gloom and doom messaging about if you don't support hydropower, we're all going to hell in a handbasket or whatever. That is not an appropriate. Come in with dark doom and gloom messages is too much for people. So to really focus on the good things that hydropower provides, and I'm just saying, obviously mitigation for climate change is part of the story, but access to power is really part of the story. The price of power is really part of the story. All these things and nuanced have made it really an interesting journey, and as far as our messaging is concerned. So and the environment's changed since we started out. I think when we started out with you, I think we could be a bit more strident with our young spokesperson at the time, our Greta, as we called her, and they're going like, hey, grown-ups, if you don't take care of this, my future is threatened, to where we are now, which is more of an, again, nuanced discussion around the pros and cons. What we've always loved about you guys as a client, though, is your willingness to and transparency and honesty with the public about where things haven't worked, which is great too. So, and what I mean is, yeah, that we put up these dams in the last century, and it caused some real problems for our communities and our wildlife. And you've never shied away from being clear about that, which I think is applaudable and magnificent. And we don't see enough of that in our business, people being. And I think having that kind of level of honesty and transparency really builds trust with people. So every time you're being clear about that, you're putting deposits into the bank of goodwill. And I think that's commendable.
That is something, speaking, from a more personal perspective, that was really great coming into this world from an outside point of view, so to speak, is I was introduced to it through the hatchery and fish mitigation side of things. And so seeing what our membership that we're, now representing, and I'm now representing as a communicator at this organization, seeing what they invest and what they put into really owning that and taking it head on, and being, in a lot of ways, proud of the fact that they've worked so hard to try and make up for some of the downsides of hydropower. That spirit definitely is carried into our work. It's been something inspiring to be a part of, and it's been really great to continue that, obviously, in how we outwardly communicate to the rest of the world and how we reach people and try and share, the great work that people in our region have done. It's a really unique thing, I think, as you said, and it's something that we hear from so many different angles on this podcast, is sort of the uniqueness of this industry, and particularly the Northwest as a subset of it compared to maybe other energy in other parts of our country or parts of the world.
Yeah, and just even to hear you say the downsides of hydropower, I've not met many clients, not been around many clients who are willing to say at any point that concede that there might be a downside of what has happened. And you guys have been so honest and transparent about that. Again, I think it's highly commendable, and it just makes us want to work with you more. Because we're all human, so we all recognize the challenges.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of a lot of challenges that we have to face from all sorts of different angles. And so, yeah, it pays off to have a complete conversation, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of the sort of advertising space as a whole, looking, a little more broadly at where we're at right now. I mean, you pointed to the fact that people are kind of bombarded by a lot of doom and gloom and, the divisiveness and politicalness of things really doesn't necessarily play to our favor or to the favor of a lot of people, I think, in trying to be part of the conversation or get a message out there, things like that. It also seems like there's been so many shifts in just where people are accessible through advertising these days, and the advertising landscape has changed so much. And I've even noticed as obviously a consumer of digital media as well, that the way that I'm being advertised to in terms of where they're showing up has really changed a lot. Has that been something that has been kind of exciting to try and get to the bottom of and figure out, strategically, how do you how do you reach people? Or is it, I mean, in some ways, like from again, a consumer perspective, it feels like it would be really challenging just with how many different platforms there are and how many different places people access media and ways they access media.
It is exciting and terrifying at the same time. When I started in this business, there were like 4 or 5 places where you placed advertising on television and billboards, in the newspaper, in magazines, on the radio. That was it. And then suddenly, in the 90s, that exploded, and we call it the proliferation of and diversification of media. Suddenly, there was much more media than there'd ever been before, and it was it could be highly tailored and highly focused on, targeted on one particular person. So it was almost like the end of the death of mass reach. And that's been complicated enough figuring that out. And just when we thought we had the hang of that, suddenly in this last year, AI has come along, and that's blown it all up again. So I think we're facing another revolution in media over the next few. I mean, in the next 10 minutes, it'll all have changed. I was about to say a few years, but the evolutions in technology are taking place in a matter of minutes, days, not months and years anymore. So it's all sped up, I guess, is what I'm saying. We're once again navigating unknown territory and trying to figure out what's going to happen next with our industry. So, in AI, that's not just about how you make advertising. We have done a couple of campaigns, soup to nuts, using AI only in the last year, which has been amazing and terrifying at the same time. What you can ask it to do, what AI will do to create an image really, really quickly, that you can, within. I sat in a conference room once saying, oh my God, we've got to the point where we can now strategize, conceive, make, and put into the world a campaign in one day. That's crazy. Now, there's still quite a lot of things that it's not very good at. AI still doesn't do hands very well. Or people's eyes are still pretty scary to look at, and AI eyes, but it's getting over that. So that there's that part of AI. There's the part about enhanced precision and targeting. That AI is going to take over our performance media. It'll be able to do it at the touch the button. So there's what that's going to take away jobs. That's going to make, I don't know. It has huge implications. There's new formats, other new formats of media that we have to take, like augmented reality and virtual reality. What are they doing to our business? And then all sorts of stuff around data, third-party data usage is phasing out. California was the first to make third-party cookies illegal. So that is changing our business once again as we figure out how to, in a way that respects people's privacy, also get meaningful data so we can reach them in advertising. So much is changing all the time, and we have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, in some ways, it kind of feels like it's the wild west of of advertising right now in terms of, it's this new digital frontier that's evolving very quickly and is unexplored, and as you
Right.
also mentioned, a lot of times unregulated and in the process of being regulated. So it's something else to witness. I can only imagine how hard it is to try and plan ahead for.
I mean, we can make some assumptions about what's going to happen, but quite often we simply don't know until it does happen. And I'm like, okay, well, we can't do that anymore. Or look what's opened up to us. My gosh, let's take advantage of that. And we have to stay aware of and get immersed in the new technologies as soon as they're available so that we understand the right way to use them and all those kinds of things. So it is time consuming for sure. But it's exciting. And as I said already, terrifying.
And the AI thing in particular is really fascinating to hear about. We've talked a lot about AI on this podcast in the past from a completely different angle, but haven't really talked about the actual integration and usage. And I suppose it's maybe a question that we already all know the answer to, but I imagine that in terms of how you see AI being utilized in the future, it's probably inevitable, right? That it's just going to be part of work moving forward in some capacity or another. And it's not going to be optional, like, do we use it or not? It's just going to be, hey, it's there, and this is how we work with it.
This is revolutionary. I think, and I'm definitely of a mind, as are my colleagues, that we need to embrace it, and it's the way going forward. This is, to us, this is like, saying take it or leave it, or even railing against it would be the same as railing against the invention of the printing press. I mean, it's here and it's inevitable, and we need to make sure I was going to say master it. I'm not sure. That sounds a bit Star Warsy, but we need to be able to use it for good and for the benefit of our clients and ourselves. So it is inevitable, in my opinion.
And I think that ties into something that I had wanted to ask you, which is, given the conversations we have had on the podcast, a lot of them have centered around the energy impact that AI has because it commands so much more energy to
Yeah.
power the servers, the data centers, everything that'll actually physically back up what AI is capable of doing in a digital way.
Right.
And it has this tremendous potential to grow our energy demand in a very rapid pace. I think that the conversation that we just had recently on this podcast with another organization here in the Northwest was looking at something to the tune of around 30% energy demand growth in the Northwest over the next decade or so. And that largely came from data centers that are going to be powering all this new AI. And I guess I'm just curious, when we look at advertising, we see more opportunities for like um, carbon-free advertising or, advertising backed by renewable energy or these different ways that you can sort of offset the energy
Yeah.
demand of digital advertising. I'm curious what ways, moving forward, an advertiser can sort of intersect their work with clean energy, renewable energy, and working towards this, carbon-free future that we talk about so often.
You're right. And the truth is, there isn't much right now. So I was horrified to learn that digital advertising contributes right now to about something like 3.5% of the world's greenhouse gases, which was shocking to me. we do already, and we have with you guys actually being able to assess the carbon impact of our campaigns and by offsets in a hope that does some good. It's not ideal, but there's that. And there are people working on technologies now that trying to kind of reduce the impact of data loads and simplify tech stacks and that sort of things in an effort to reduce the impact of the advertising that we do in terms of data load. And figure out more efficient ad delivery and all those things. But I guess step number one, which you're saying, is just be cognizant of it. Even the jobs that we do are contributing to this problem. And I don't think all clients think of it that way right now. So our job, I guess, is to raise awareness of it and participate in ways to mitigate for it as and when they arrive.
It'll be very interesting to see too what options become available. I always kind of joke with people now, though. It's like, okay, yes, AI exists, and I hear all the time from people in the utility space how useful it is for them to, in a similar way to what you were describing with planning out and sort of putting together an ad campaign. They were talking about, hey, we can really use this to build a web page that we need, or put together a social media post or something like that. But, with AI being accessible to the public and, everyone can go use Chat GPT or any of these other functions that are out there now, anything that you throw in there obviously is going to have some sort of energy demand. So, when you request some silly, ridiculous thing, it's actually having this real world impact that you'd never think of in a million years.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a role going forward to educating people on understanding that anything they do in this format, or in so many things, requires energy and it has to come from somewhere. So a more real-worldy example of that is everybody rushing out to buy electric vehicles, which is an important thing, and we advocate for that. It's very good, but they've got to also think about whether electricity comes from to power those electric vehicles. And I don't think people are fully making those connections. So then it becomes back to behaviors. Like, do you really need to ask that dumb question of AI? Do you really need to drive there today? All those things.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot to unpack there and figure out, and I'm sure it'll be something that people will be probably putting PSAs out for in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
As far as, as far as taking on issues, as far as trying to cover important messages, and whether it is something like raising awareness and educating people on the benefits of hydropower, or whether it's the Humane Society or any of the other examples we've talked about, why is it important for an ad agency to take on issues, be decisive about which issues they actually want to support in some way or another, and raise awareness for different causes, as opposed to just, saying yes to anything and everything that comes through the door?
Yeah, I think it's actually really important for any company to be a good citizen of the community in which it's doing business, to provide real value for people, and to put things into the world that are going to enhance people's and the community and the earth. So it's not just agency specific. So but to take that as a responsible agency, and given that we have the skills and tools to know how to get messages out into the world, we should help other companies that are trying to do good do that, and we should help get the right messages out there that we think are going to enhance lives, if that makes sense. So as a human being, I've always said there's things that I will just never work on. I'm never going to work on a cigarette account. That's just not going to happen. Or anything that I feel is poisoning people or the world in any way. I'm just, we're going to draw the line, but we are going to get behind things that we think are important, and as I've already said, adding value to people's lives. So,
And does it seem like more companies or organizations, but especially more and more companies, it seems to me like that's being embraced, before they even come to the table on advertising. I feel like more folks are marketing themselves or positioning themselves as do-gooders in the world, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I think two things have made that possible or advisable or imperative even. One is digital media and complete transparency. It's very easy for people to find out about companies and behind the scenes. You can't just put up a screen anymore. They're going to, the truth will out. They know what's going on. So you should behave accordingly, like good citizens. So that's one thing. And then in a world in which everything is sort of a struggle right now, it's divided, the news is dark, probably because of media again. Everybody, it's things feel black in a bad way. I feel it's everybody's responsibility to lighten things up a bit and bring honesty and truth and good things into the world. So we're not just living under a barrage of people arguing and fighting with each other and saying crappy things about each other. Does that make sense? So sometimes, unfortunately, in other countries to a degree and in other ages, our governments were able to provide, to keep us buoyed and excited and living great lives. And for whatever reason, it's less the case today. So I feel it's incumbent on everybody, citizens and companies and institutions in life, to find ways to bring levity to our difficult lives.
So when it comes to where things are headed next, where we see advertising going in the future, besides bringing levity, besides being integrated with AI, I mean, what else is on the horizon? Where else do you see things moving to, evolving to, this sort of, trend line that we're on? I mean, where does it take us next?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I feel I've got some Back to the Future lines in my head, like, Austin, where we're going, we won't need roads. There are no rules. I don't know, to be honest. Our job is to keep tabs of developments as and when they come up. I would like to think, I'm sure the media will proliferate. There'll be more opportunities to show up in people's lives. We will be advertising to you from your refrigerator, from the screens in your bathroom. I hope we do that in a way that is acceptable, doesn't invade your privacy, and I hope that as an industry we're cognizant of that. But who knows where the future will take us? Got to be honest with you.
I can definitely understand that. It's a little bit off topic, but it did remind me of this, that there was this CrowdStrike situation that hit the world not too long ago now, and I'm sure you're familiar with that and the the global fallout that was taking place. And in the midst of that, I saw something online, and you never know, anything online has a hint of being false, but I saw something online to the effect of somebody's smart refrigerator had been crashed by this thing. And, now these things have these giant screens on the front, and essentially they couldn't utilize any of the smart technology built into their refrigerator, which is a very new problem to the world.
I mean, and honestly, maybe this is reflective of my age, but thank God, just at some point, is it too much? Have we gone too far? But no, I feel very sorry for those people that they were unable to tell that their milk had run out by simply looking in the fridge because their screen didn't work or whatever it was. But yeah.
And it's also funny too. I mean, just to think about, how this stuff has evolved. I know that the first time, for example, that I was at a gas station and the gas pump started playing an advertising video to me, I thought, what in the world is this? It was just like a totally strange concept to me. And now, of course, it's not everywhere, but it's pretty expansive as far as where you see that kind of stuff. So
Oh, I
it's
was in
very
an Uber.
interesting to watch it evolve.
I was in an Uber yesterday, and you think the concept was originally you're in a private person's car, so you wouldn't expect to see this. But what I got on the back of I was behind the passenger seat, and there was, they had a screen there, an iPad or whatever, and it just playing back advertising, in-car advertising. And I'm like, I can't get away. I can't get away from it. It's just awful. It's no kidding. People are getting 10,000 plus advertising messages a day. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's truly crazy.
Mhm.
As far as, just anything else that we didn't touch on today. I mean, are there other things that you feel like our audience, particularly, audience of abnormally enthusiastic about hydropower folks there might appreciate knowing or understanding about what we do, or maybe the campaign, or just anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, well, two things. Well, the most important thing is like, great job, everybody. Keep up the good work, because I personally believe that hydropower is absolutely critical, and this is extraordinary work that you're doing for this region. I don't underthink how much education people need around this. And I've said this a few times recently. There used to be a time in schools here when kids would all go to Bonneville Power and have a tour of the dam and get kind of hands-on experience and understanding of that, of how it works and what it's doing. And I think there's less of that these days. I think people, and there's also more people moving into the region who weren't born here, right? Who moved here, who don't understand it. So I think that ongoing education programs and involvement with schools and that kind of thing is critically important, so people understand how we live, how we're able to live these lovely lives that we have in the Pacific Northwest. So don't underestimate that. Bring some of that back.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, obviously we talked about the critters and all the animals towards the beginning of the podcast, but we don't want to let Herman the sturgeon get lonely over there at the Bonneville hatchery.
Go see him. It's fun. It's cool. So definitely in favor of that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I always try and push people to go find opportunities like that, because uh, I don't know, if there's a way to get the word out there about it more, but it's so impressive once you get to go check it out in person. And people that
Right.
haven't been able to do it yet, they're missing out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just, again, as far as kids' education is concerned, I do, to the degree that they can have partnerships with the school districts or whatever, I do think it's a cool part, a cool education part. It's cool. It's science, it's industry, it's economy, it's lots of things. So it's history. So let's bring it.
And we're going to need all those people that we can to hopefully help us power all this new stuff coming our way as well.
Yeah, and maybe it inspires some kid to figure out, what the next best thing is in terms of carbon-free power to keep all these things going. Um, you know, or how to fully understand how hydropower can work again with solar and wind and all the other things, and maybe some new things that we haven't thought of for sure to make this all work, because we're gonna need energy.
Definitely. A lot of it, at least 30% more of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Per your previous guest.
right, right.
Right.
Well, I think that really kind of brings us to the tail end of things. We covered a lot of different ground here and whatnot. And I don't know, other than having an instrumental role in actually developing the podcast and coming up with a great name for it. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to too many of our episodes or anything like that, but we always close out every episode by coming full circle. We start out talking about who the guest is and talking about their background and things like that. And then we try and close out by come back around to the guest again and trying to let our listeners know a little bit more about you. And so The plan that I devised for doing so is to put everyone on the spot and force them to give me and our listeners a little piece of advice. And it can just be something general. It doesn't have to do anything with our conversation today. I just try and give people the opportunity to say, hey, this is important to me. It's important to how I live my life, or important to my career. Or maybe it's just something that you saw recently and you thought, gosh, that really stuck out to me and I want more people to hear about it. So I always try and give people that opportunity just to let us know what makes you you and what other people can learn from you.
There shouldn't be a hard sell to your listeners, but the one thing that I've realized in the last really a lot of years, because I'm quite old, is the importance of the outdoors. So I was lucky enough to grow up in rural England on a farm, and with parents who would just kick you out at the beginning of the day and not let you back in until the sun was going down. And I've lived in big cities. Now I'm living back out in rural Oregon again. And I have to say, I am so buoyed up and infused with energy and also calmness. And it's just being close to nature and the outdoors is such a life-giving force for me. And I encourage everybody to enjoy as much as that as possible. It's for, your physical and mental well-being. Access to the outdoors is incredibly important. And also part of my life's work as well is ensuring that everybody gets equal access to the outdoors, no matter who they are, because I think it's that important. And for your listening public right now, I would say the extraordinary work that you're doing with hydropower is helping us maintain our outdoors. And I know it's come at a cost, but right now, with 5 mega fires, 100 routine regular fires, all sorts of things going on in the world, I think this is incredibly important work. So get outdoors, folks, hug a tree, and remember how good hydropower is for you. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a bit biased. I have a bit of a addiction to the outdoors, I would say, but I'm absolutely 100% with you when it comes to that. I think, yeah, the best medicine in the world is just getting out there and getting some fresh air and all that. I do want to ask one bonus question before we totally wrap up. So having a background being in England and then coming over here to the Northwest, in terms of which one is muddier to deal with, I have to know.
England, no doubt, hands down. No, people always said, "Oh, you're going to a very rainy place." And I came here in '92, and it barely rained at all for between February and October. And I was like, "What are they talking about?" And hands down, it's much further north, so there is that as well. But every time I go back to England, I'm trudging around the fields and the woods and the back streets with, Wellington boots on in several inches of mud, and it doesn't happen here that much. So hands down, I come from a rainier place, if you can imagine that.
No, it's good to know. It's good to get to the bottom of that. If nothing else, we can learn from today's episode. We now have a definitive answer on that one. So
I'm sure the scientists will agree. The weather people.
I don't know how they measure that. Maybe whichever they stick a boot in the mud and see which one sinks further.
Yeah, it's probably something like that, isn't it? Actually, maybe we should just run tests. Next time I go home, I'll take some pictures of me in boots on and come back here and just show it for the world.
We need the proof now, yeah.
Don't worry.
Well, thank you so much for making the time today. This was really fun, and we got to cover a lot of different stuff. And I think people are going to be really excited to hear about, the background of our ad campaign and the stuff we're putting out there. I mean, we certainly haven't been shy about how much we love our power is water at Northwest RiverPartners, and we shout it out all the time and plaster it everywhere. So it's great to get to give people a bit more insight into how we do it and how we make it happen, and really excited for people to listen to this. So yeah, thank you for making the time. Thanks for sharing your insights today, and I know that we'll be in touch much more as we get to the end of this year's campaign, but hopefully people can go check out North, see what you guys do in terms of your other campaigns, and go check out some of your amazing work.
Yeah, thanks for everybody. You can check us out at northagency.com. And thank you for your time today, Austin. It's been really fun chatting with you. And we love the work we do for you guys and can't wait to see how this campaign turns out, which we already know is going pretty well, judging by the halftime results. So can't wait to share the end.
It was great to chat with Rebecca and have the opportunity for all of you to get to know her and North, as we've really enjoyed working with them the past few years. We really believe in the important role of the Our Power is Water campaign, and it's been great to share the story of hydropower with audiences who may not know what's in their own backyard or why it matters. We also got to talk about dachshunds, the origins of dam, and the great outdoors, so hopefully there was truly something for everyone in this episode. If you want to talk about any of that or anything else, you can head on over to nwriverpartners.org and click or tap Contact Us in the top menu. You can let us know what you think of the podcast and tell us who or what you'd like to hear about next. You can also share anything else you'd like or shoot us some questions. For those who are less web savvy, don't want to take the time to head to our website and find that button in our menu, you can also just email us directly at info@nwriverpartners.org. Just recently, I was sharing the podcast with an interested new listener who was unable to find us on their favorite listening platform. Finding us by search without putting in DAM exclamation point and possibly adding Northwest River Partners can actually be a little tricky. That's because those searches are driven by an algorithm, and that algorithm favors podcasts with lots of positive reviews and subscribers. So, as I always do at the end of these, I'm asking you to give us a favorable review on your listening platform that you're on right now, and subscribe to DAM. You can even turn on notifications so you know when we upload every other Friday. This really helps us out and helps new listeners find the podcast so that it's not such a difficult process for searching for us. Also, we've been working on finding some solutions for transcribing DAM, which is trickier than you might think as well. We have discovered that the Apple Podcast app can actually transcribe the podcast on mobile devices and can even translate it to other languages. So for right now, that's what we're going to recommend for those who need it. YouTube also allows similar functions for mobile and desktop, though their captions can be a bit off. We'll continue working on this, but we wanted to put some information out there for those who could benefit from utilizing these features. Finally, don't forget to find us on social media at NW River Partners. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. It looks like the high heat is returning for the Northwest these next few days, but hopefully you all and myself can get out and enjoy some of that much needed fresh air very soon. Have fun, stay safe, and until next time, see ya.